Hello, everyone. I'm the narrator of Late Stories, here to guide you into a calm, quiet night. Before you drift off, tap like and hit subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? All right, get comfortable, settle in, let your body get heavy, and relax. The gravel crunched under my tires, unnaturally loud. Morwenna's home, once vibrant, now loomed like a forgotten sentinel. A pervasive dread met me at the gate, a cold finger tracing my spine. The air felt dense, holding something profoundly wrong. Morwenna opened the door, a wraith of her former self. Her vibrant hair lay lank, and her eyes, once sparkling, were sunk deep, shadowed by exhaustion. Her smile was a strained curve. "You came," she whispered. She led me into a living room stripped of comfort, echoing with an invisible chill. The source was Torvin and his basement. He had retreated weeks ago, delving into projects she spoke of only with a shudder. His obsession had consumed him, warping not just his days, but the house itself. It felt hollowed out, an unsettling coldness clinging to every surface, an alien presence. My gaze drifted, catching on a small figure perched atop a bookshelf in the corner. It was a doll, not a child's plaything, but something older, carved from dark, distressed wood. Its features were crudely rendered yet unnervingly specific, its wide, unblinking eyes seeming to bore into me. A shiver traced my skin. I turned to Morwenna, but before I could speak, another doll emerged from the shadowed archway of the dining room, then another on the mantelpiece, each a twin in unsettling antiquity. They were everywhere, these figures, watching from shelves, from tabletops, from the very edges of my periphery. Each time I looked away, then back, their fixed gazes felt like a subtle shift, a predatory assessment. Morwenna followed my line of sight, her expression crumbling. "He calls them his children," she murmured, her voice thin. "Torvin buys them hundreds of pounds, sometimes thousands, for these things. He brings them home and spends hours, days down there in the dark, with them. Sometimes I hear him speaking. It's not English, it's guttural, like something torn from deep earth, and he speaks to them, names them." She gestured vaguely towards a particularly ornate doll with braided hemp hair, standing rigidly by the unlit fireplace. "That one is Lilith. He spends more time with her than he does with me. He just retreats further and further into their company. They are his world now, and I am merely an echo in his periphery." Morwenna's voice, a threadbare whisper, snapped. "Come. You have to see." Her eyes, once pools of sorrow, now held a frantic, desperate glint. She moved with a sudden, jerky determination towards a narrow door I hadn't noticed before, tucked almost seamlessly into the wall beside the fireplace. It led to a short, descending flight of wooden steps, each creaking underfoot like a protest. A smell, thick and cloying, reached us from below, a mingling of stale earth, ancient wood, and something sharply metallic, like old blood mixed with iron filings. It snagged in my throat, acrid and disturbing. The basement workshop was not merely dim, it was swallowed by an oppressive gloom. A single bare bulb, swinging slightly from the ceiling, cast long, distorted shadows that danced with our entry. The air was heavy, viscous, with that unsettling scent, and with a palpable wrongness. Benches were littered with strange, arcane instruments, bone-handled knives, intricate brass calipers, tiny vials containing viscous, iridescent liquids. Parchments covered in unfamiliar glyphs lay spread open, weighted by smoothed river stones. And there, at the center of this macabre tableau, was Torvin. He sat hunched over a workbench, his back to us, engrossed. His hands, pale and slender, worked meticulously with tiny tools on something unseen. Before him, enthroned on a raised pedestal, sat Lilith. She was larger than the others, almost child-sized, her braided hemp hair now interwoven with what looked like dried sinew. Her crudely carved wooden face was eerily smooth, her wide obsidian eyes reflecting the bare bulb with a depth that felt impossibly alive. A current, cold and ancient, emanated from her, making the hairs on my arms prickle. It was a presence, undeniably, Morwenna's breath hitched. She took a step towards Torvin, her hand reaching out, trembling. "Torvin," she pleaded, her voice cracking, "please, look at me. What are you doing down here? This isn't you." He did not stir. He merely hummed a low, tuneless sound that seemed to resonate from the depths of his chest, utterly oblivious to her anguish. His fingers continued their work, a slow, deliberate movement. Despair clawed at Morwenna, her eyes, wide and horrified, fixed on Lilith. It was as if she saw not a doll, but the devourer of her husband, the very embodiment of his monstrous obsession. With a sudden, desperate surge, a need to break the spell, to tear back the veil of madness, Morwenna lunged forward. Her hand, trembling with a reckless courage born of utter desperation, reached out and clutched Lilith's wooden arm. The moment her fingers closed around the polished wood, something tore open within her mind. A torrent of alien consciousness, ancient and ravenous, flooded her senses. It was a searing wave of pure, unfathomable hunger, a boundless void that stretched back through forgotten epochs, demanding to be fed, to be given flesh and form. She felt millennia of dormant malice awaken, a parasitic entity coiled within the doll, now stirring, sensing a potential vessel. Images flashed, desolate landscapes, skeletal figures dancing under a blood-red moon, the echoing screams of countless victims, and always that consuming, insatiable craving. Her own identity, her very being, began to unravel, dissolving into the vast cosmic emptiness that pulsed from the doll. A cold, possessive grasp clamped around her soul, threatening to pull her into an abyss of eternal servitude. A guttural shriek tore from Morwenna's throat, raw and animalistic. She recoiled violently, stumbling backwards, her eyes wide with a terror that clawed beyond reason. She scrambled away, pushing past me, her breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. The basement, the dolls, Torvin still hunched over his work. All of it dissolved into a blur of pure, unadulterated horror as she fled, heedless of the steps, driven by an instinct for survival she didn't know she possessed. Morwenna's frantic call ripped me from my dazed stupor. Her voice was a strangled sob, a desperate plea for escape. "Get us out," she choked, the words barely coherent. I didn't question. Her terror was contagious, a raw, undeniable truth. I found her by the front door, trembling, clutching her keys like a lifeline. We burst into the night, the cold air a stark contrast to the burning horror still etched on her face. I steered the car away from the house, tires spitting gravel, a desperate flight into the dark. As the headlights swept past the upper floor, I saw it. A doll, its dark, vacant eyes fixed on our retreating vehicle from Morwenna's bedroom window, a silent, unblinking sentinel. It was a promise, not of an end, but of a wait. We were free, for now, but the insidious hunger remained, patiently biding its time within the walls of that house. The ring of his phone was shrill, an unwelcome intrusion into the evening's quiet. Jory glanced at the caller ID. Rorik. A strange unease tightened in his gut. Rorik rarely called this late, and never without a preamble of texts. He answered, "Jory, thank God." Rorik's voice burst through the receiver, raw and frayed at the edges. It was more a desperate gasp than a greeting. "It's Myra. Something's happened. She's not Myra anymore." Jory sat up straighter, the casual comfort of his armchair evaporating. "What are you talking about? Is she hurt?" "Worse. So much worse," Rorik choked out, a sound like a suppressed sob following. "Remember that wellness trip? The one she was so excited about, out in the foothills? She came back a different person. Not just changed. Replaced." Jory waited, his mind scrambling for context. Myra, vibrant, opinionated, full of life. The idea of her being replaced was absurd. Yet, Rorik's terror was undeniably real. "She hasn't spoken a word since she got back 2 weeks ago," Rorik continued, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "Not a sound. She moves through the house like a ghost. Her eyes, they just look through me, like I'm not even there." This was the first tremor. Myra? Silent? Impossible? She debated the merits of milk versus oat milk with Jory for half an hour last month. Okay, so she debated the merits of milk with Jory for half an hour last month. Maybe she just needs to decompress, Jory offered, though even as he said it, he knew it sounded weak, inadequate. No, Jory, you don't understand, Rourke insisted, a frantic edge returning to his tone. It's not quiet, it's empty. A void where her voice used to be. And the food. Oh God, the food. Here came the next spike. What about the food? She won't eat anything cooked. Nothing from the fridge. She went into the garden, Jory, the garden, and she pulled up earthworms. Just pulled them up and ate them, raw, like they were perfectly normal. Then she started collecting night crawlers in a jar. She'll just watch them. Rourke's voice cracked. And the birds. We had a robin build a nest outside the kitchen window. I found the nest empty, the chicks gone. And Myra was just sitting there, staring out, her face so still. Jory felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. Earthworms? Missing bird chicks? This wasn't just a quiet phase. It was an unsettling, grotesque transformation. And the rituals, Rourke went on, the despair in his voice deepening. Every morning, before the sun comes up, she goes out to the old oak tree in the backyard. She traces symbols on its bark with her fingers. Symbols I've never seen before. Then she sits beneath it for hours, just still, like a statue. And at night, she lights these strange candles, made of some dark wax I don't recognize, and she watches them burn, sometimes until dawn. No prayer, no meditation, just watching the flame, her face completely blank. Jory could picture it, the quiet house, the flickering, unfamiliar light, Myra's unnervingly still form. It was a tableau of deep, unnatural dread. The unevenness of the horror was disorienting. From silence to shocking diet to arcane rituals, each revelation was a punch. I tried to talk to her, Jory, Rourke whispered, his voice barely audible now. I tried to hug her. She felt cold. Not just physically, but deep inside. And there's this smell about her now, faint but distinct, like damp earth and something else, something metallic. And a feeling. When she's near, it's like a hand closing around your heart, a cold, heavy dread that just settles. I'm scared, Jory, scared of her, scared for her. The call ended with Rourke's raw plea for help hanging in the air. Jory was left with the chilling echoes of his friend's terror, the grotesque images of Myra's alien actions, and the profound, cold dread Rourke described. He had to go. He had to see it for himself. Whatever had come back from that wellness trip, it wasn't the Myra he knew. The drive to Myra's house felt like entering a different dimension. Rourke's frantic words still echoed, but the physical world outside the car window was still, ordinary, oblivious. He pulled into the familiar driveway, the old house standing sentinel under the dim street lights. No lights were on. A pit formed in Jory's stomach. Rourke had said Myra was awake at all hours, watching candles burn. He used the spare key Rourke had given him, the click of the lock unnaturally loud in the pervasive quiet. The air inside was cool, stagnant, carrying a faint, unfamiliar scent of damp earth and something acrid, almost metallic. Rourke had mentioned a smell. Jory's heart gave a lurch. This was real. He moved through the entryway, calling out Myra's name, then Rourke's. No answer. The rooms were swallowed by shadows, the familiar furniture distorted into looming shapes. He found Myra in the living room, sitting on the plush Persian rug, not on the sofa. Her back was to the doorway, her frame unnaturally slender, almost brittle. She wore a simple shift dress, pale and loose, clinging to her jutting collarbones. The room itself was devoid of light, save for the faint silver glow filtering in from the street outside. Myra? Jory's voice felt thick, alien in the heavy air. She turned slowly, her movement unhurried, almost deliberate. Jory saw her face then, gaunt, hollowed. The vibrant warmth that had always been her defining feature was gone, replaced by a pallor that seemed to absorb the scant light. Her eyes, once pools of intelligent fire, were flat, opaque, like polished stones. They passed over him without recognition, without flicker, then settled on an indeterminate point beyond his shoulder. He felt the shiver trace its way down his spine. This was Myra's body, but the spark, the essence, was utterly extinguished. He took a cautious step closer. Myra, are you all right? Rourke called me. He's worried. Her head tilted fractionally, a slow, almost mechanical gesture. Her lips remained pressed together, pale and bloodless. She lifted a hand, her fingers unnervingly long and thin, and made a slow, looping motion in the air, a gesture Jory could not interpret. It wasn't a wave, nor a dismissal. It seemed to trace an invisible shape, intricate and without meaning he could grasp. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. He felt an intense need to lower his own volume, as if any loud sound would shatter the fragile, awful equilibrium of the room. Myra lowered her hand, her gaze still fixed somewhere beyond him. Then, with the same deliberate slowness, she shifted her weight, turning fully to face the wall. Her index finger began to trace patterns on the bare plaster. They were not words, nor familiar symbols. They were intricate, interlocking designs, loops and sharp angles that connected and separated in a mesmerizing, unsettling rhythm. Her focus was absolute, her brow furrowed slightly in concentration, as if this tracing was the most vital act in the world. Jory watched, transfixed by the quiet intensity of her action. The bizarre patterns flowed from her fingertip, invisible yet palpably present in the air, creating a disturbing narrative of their own. His mind struggled to find a rational explanation, but none came. This was not grief, not shock, not even madness, he recognized. This was something else. A profound, alien emptiness had settled within Myra, and it radiated outward, slowly filling the room, pressing down on Jory until his chest felt tight, his breath shallow. The sense of unease he felt was not sudden panic, but a deep, pervasive wrongness, a creeping horror that rooted itself in his bones. This stillness was more terrifying than Rorik's frantic warnings. He felt utterly disconnected, a stranger in a familiar house, standing before a stranger wearing Myra's skin. Myra's finger paused mid-pattern, hovering an inch above the plaster. The movement was so abrupt, so utterly out of rhythm with the hypnotic tracing, that Jory's heart seized. The air, already thick with unspoken dread, seemed to solidify, pressing in on him. Myra's head, with its gaunt, pale features, turned slowly. Her eyes, those flat, dull stones, fixed on him. Then, her lips parted. It was a slight movement, almost imperceptible, but it sent a fresh wave of ice through Jory's veins. A sound escaped, a dry, rustling whisper that grated like parched leaves skittering across barren earth. It was not Myra's voice. It was too old, too brittle, utterly devoid of the warmth or life he remembered. "You see now?" the whisper rasped, each syllable a razor's edge against his consciousness. Jory could not speak. He could not even manage a gasp. His throat was a constricted tube, his lungs refusing to obey. The words, so simple, so loaded with alien intent, felt like a direct assault on his sanity. Myra's head tilted further, a slow, deliberate motion that seemed to peel back layers of something ancient and malevolent. The old self, a husk, impurity, clinging to the skin. Her hand, skeletal and elongated, rose to touch her own cheek, tracing the hollow beneath her eye with a chilling tenderness. It had to be shed, cleansed, made anew. Jory's mind reeled. Cleansed? This gaunt, silent specter, eating worms, tracing symbols, radiating cold dread, believed herself purified. The horror of her transformation deepened, shifting from mere strangeness to something far more sinister, a deliberate, self-imposed perversion. Then, without breaking her vacant stare, Myra reached into the loose, pale fabric of her dress. Her fingers disappeared into the folds, emerging slowly, deliberately. In her hand, nestled against her palm, was a small box. It was crafted from dark, unvarnished wood, its surface smooth and worn, its edges sharp. There were no adornments, no intricate carvings, just the stark, unyielding simplicity of its form. It looked ancient, primal. A knot of terror tightened in Jory's gut. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but he was rooted to the spot, trapped in the oppressive stillness, compelled to witness the unfolding horror. Myra's thumb pushed the lid open with a faint, dry click. Jory's breath hitched. Inside, resting on a bed of dried, dark leaves that looked like crumbled bits of forest floor, was a human finger. It was small, shriveled and dark, almost black, like a mummified relic. The nail, surprisingly intact, was a dull, yellowish gray. The end where it had been severed was a rough, jagged line, a stark testament to a brutal separation. It was unmistakably a human digit, dried and preserved, grotesquely out of place, sickeningly real. A wave of nausea washed over Jory, his vision blurred, the room tilting precariously around him. He pressed a hand over his mouth, suppressing a retch. The metallic scent Rorik had mentioned, faint before, now seemed to surge, sharp and coppery, filling his nostrils. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. Myra's gaze, previously fixed on him, dropped to the box, a strange, possessive gleam entering her otherwise dead eyes. She lifted the box slightly, presenting its horrific contents as if it were a precious jewel. "A totem," she whispered, the dry rustle of her voice deepening, gaining a low resonance that vibrated in Jory's chest. "To remind. To guide." Her eyes lifted again, meeting his with an intensity that burned. The blankness was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating awareness that filled Jory with absolute dread. He felt utterly exposed, every fear laid bare before her. Then she spoke of Rorik. The words were not shouted, not venomous, but delivered with the detached, chilling precision of a pronouncement. "Rorik resists. Rorik does not understand. He clings to the old, to the weakness." Jory's world shattered. The carefully constructed walls of his sanity crumbled, leaving him adrift in a churning sea of pure, unadulterated terror. "Rorik resists." The words echoed, cold and final. Rorik, his friend, was not merely scared or worried. He was in active opposition to this alien entity that wore Myra's skin. And what happened to those who resisted? The shriveled finger in the wooden box seemed to pulse with a dark, unspeakable answer. The implication was horrifying, direct, and undeniable. Rorik had been in the house with her. Rorik had tried to touch her. The horror was not just what Myra was, but what she had done or what she was doing. Jory felt a scream building in his chest, choked and desperate. His blood ran cold, then hot with a terrifying rush of adrenaline. He had walked into a tomb, and the resident had just shown him a piece of its last occupant. The sight of the finger, the awful declaration about Rorik, ripped through Jory's last vestiges of composure. A raw, guttural scream tried to tear free from his throat, but dissolved into a choked gasp. Every cell in his body roared one command: fleece. He stumbled backward, not looking away from Myra's eyes, which now held a predatory gleam, or the grotesque totem in her hand. His legs, stiff with shock moments before, suddenly surged with an adrenaline-fueled power. He turned, a clumsy, desperate pivot, and launched himself towards the door. The oppressive quiet of the house was shattered only by the frantic pounding of his own heart, a drumbeat of pure terror. He clawed at the door handle, fumbling, his fingers slick with cold sweat. The click of the lock, then the wrenching open of the door, felt like an impossible triumph. He burst into the cool night air, not stopping, not looking back. He ran across the lawn, heedless of the uneven ground, reaching his car in a breathless sprint. His hands shook violently as he wrenched open the driver's side door, threw himself inside, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, a comforting sound of mechanical normalcy against the monstrous reality he had just witnessed. He slammed the car into reverse, tires spitting gravel as he tore out of the driveway. He drove blindly for a few blocks, the headlights carving a path through the blackness, his mind a chaotic storm of images. Myra's hollow face, the shriveled finger, the chilling whisper of Rorik's name. He needed Rorik. He needed to know. His right hand, still trembling, fumbled for his phone in his pocket. He pulled it out, the screen a blinding rectangle of light in the dark interior of the car. He scrolled, his thumb skittering over the contact list until Rorik's name swam into focus. He tapped it, pressing the phone to his ear with desperate urgency. The ringing began, each tone a brittle hope. One ring, 2, 3. Then the familiar, calm voice of Rorik's voicemail message began, utterly out of place, an impersonal chime in the face of such profound horror. "Hey, you've reached Rorik. Leave a message, and I'll get back to you." The pre-recorded message ended, followed by the sterile beep. Jory's breath hitched. He couldn't speak. He couldn't articulate the unspeakable fear that choked him. He hung up, the silence of the car now more deafening than any scream. Myra's chilling pronouncement, S. Rorik, resists. Rorik does not understand. SD, coiled like a venomous serpent around his thoughts, each syllable a fresh stab of dread. The world outside offered no comfort, only the terrifying echo of Myra's words, a monstrous question mark hanging over Rorik's existence. Jory drove on, destination unknown, the night an endless, terrifying void, holding all the answers he desperately sought, yet would never receive. He could not go back. He could not go forward. He simply was caught, in the wake of a horror that had swallowed his friend whole, leaving him utterly alone, utterly adrift, with nothing but the silence and the cold, stark terror.